Warning: this episode includes discussion of suicide and self-harm, which may be distressing for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. If you're feeling like you might hurt yourself or you're in immediate danger, please contact your local emergency number or a local crisis hotline. You're listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast. This is a special episode featuring a recovering addict. Hi, my name is Sophie X. I'm the host and producer of the Voices of Recovery podcast. I'm joined here today by Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hey, what's going on, Sophie?
Thank you so much for being on our January series, doing the readings for the Just for Today and for This Bad.
Not a problem. Thanks for allowing me to do some service.
And you are on our January series for Rainbows in Recovery.
It's because I'm gay, right?
It's because you're gay. You guessed it.
It fits.
Yeah, it fits.
If the tiara fits.
You wear it. Yeah, I think that this is a really important topic to discuss, especially in recovery, because I know of so many people who came into the rooms because of them grappling with their sexuality, essentially.
Sure. Yeah.
And you have a very interesting story because you didn't start out in NA, although you have spent a little bit of time in NA.
Yeah, about 2 years solidly.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently.
But you have 20 years of recovery.
Yes. I'd like to say I have 20 years back because I did put 4 years together, a little more than 4 years together back in the 90s. And then I went out for 4 years and I've been back 20 years. So a grand total of 24. And it's not so much about the time, but it's more about the message that you can go out and come back and have cumulative clean time. And that it's not like a relapse doesn't like set you.
Like reset you.
Exactly.
Right. You don't. I am a firm believer in that. I know a whole bunch of people who had like over a decade clean, relapsed, came back, and I remind them, I'm like, you think that you lost that clean time, but you have so much experience that you're bringing with you this time.
And if you didn't have that initial clean time, maybe you'd be dead right now.
Right.
I definitely think if I didn't put those 4 years together that I wouldn't be standing here with 20 today.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. You're an interesting person to speak to because you have a very broad perspective about what recovery looks like from different fellowships. And you're in the Suffolk area.
I am.
Which is the neighboring area to Nassau. So my local area is Nassau area. A lot of the voices that you've heard on the Voice of Recovery podcast are in the Nassau area. But I actually sometimes go to Suffolk meetings. I met you at a Suffolk meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke very openly about being out of the closet.
Mm.
And I remembered you. I said, I got to get this guy on. And if you see Chris, he doesn't look like a gay man.
I hear you. I get that a lot.
It's got to be the head tattoos and the neck tattoos. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I feel like as soon as I open my mouth, though, it's pretty obvious. But people still don't seem to like. They're like, "Oh, you're gay? I had no idea."
Yeah, it's a thing.
Thing.
I myself am passing, right? Like we call it straight
Yeah,
passing.
of course.
Like on like
straight privilege or privilege.
Yeah, straight privilege, straight passing, whatever you might want to call it. And that also has a very unique perspective too, to be able to kind of like operate in spaces where people don't know that you are part of the rainbow.
Well, I try to out myself every chance I get.
Me too.
I really do. I just feel like if I could be a queer, positive, experience for somebody who maybe doesn't know that. And I've had it go both ways. I'm a hairstylist, and I've had clients who I've known for years loved me, and then like I felt comfortable and I outed myself to them, watched them clam up in their chair and never come back. And that was very hurtful. I mean, I feel like it's different than like a racism where you could tell if you don't like me because of the color of my skin, we're never going to get anywhere down that road. But coming out is, that's the thing. You come out, you don't have to come out about the color of your skin every day. But every time you meet somebody, I like them to know who they're dealing with right away, right off the bat, because, hey, I don't want to have a relationship with you if you're going to have trouble with me.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it. Just kind of like get it out of the way, as soon as possible, if you feel comfortable with the person. Do you share that you're in recovery with people?
I do. I learned a long time ago that I might be the only message of recovery that anyone ever hears. I feel like my job doesn't like limit me. I feel like maybe if I was a doctor or a politician or your kid's bus driver, maybe you would have some apprehension about me doing my job. As a member of the clean community, I feel like it's almost like a duty to let people know that there's hope, and it opens up the conversation for carrying the message.
A lot of people because all of these programs are Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics
Sure.
Anonymous. They take their anonymity very seriously. And I think all perspectives are welcome, right? People wanting to stay anonymous and people wanting to share their recovery openly with the outside world, so to speak. All perspectives are important.
To each their own. I also have to be very vigilant about my disease. There's an expression, you're only as sick as your secrets. And
Mm,
if I feel like I'm starting to hide, that from somebody, then is my disease like, gaining ground? I'd rather be open and upfront about it, because I'm really the only one who has to suffer. I'm the only one who suffers if that disease gets his leg up on me, if you will.
right. I'd like for our audience to hear a little bit about who Chris is.
Hmm.
Take it away. Tell me your story. How did you get to recovery? When did you start using?
So I was brought up with, you share your experience, strength, and hope. A lot of my recovery has been tips and tricks. It's been about making things that seemed unmanageable to me manageable. And when I tell my story, if I break it down to what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, it becomes more manageable. So what it was like was I grew up in Long Beach, New York. I'd say a middle class family. I had an older brother. My mom and dad, they were both present. I had everything I needed. We got to go on vacations. We got to go to the city and see shows and stuff. I always had toys. Like I grew up in a loving home. I believe I'm an instant addict. I think my first drug of choice was attention. I was definitely that kid. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's funny. Like I'm still an addict. I haven't used drugs or had any alcohol in over 20 years, but that doesn't mean that I can't be compulsive about things today. I remember having Garbage Pail Kids in the 80s and Batman cards in the 90s. Everything I did compulsively. If I was about karate, I eat, breathe, and slept karate. If it was about surfing, everything was surf, 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 surf. And the difference was when I picked up drugs and alcohol, they didn't let go. Like I got into slingshots and I was all about slingshots and wrist rockets for, a week straight. But once I discovered alcohol, it wasn't like I outgrew it. It just kind of consumed everything. I wasn't very good at it. I have alcoholism in my family going back as far as I know, and we've lost a few members. I know it's a genetic disease, and I do believe it's a disease. I didn't believe it was a disease until I learned the lesson in rehab. That was a great tool for me, honestly. Like it was a great freedom, because before you go to program, you're an asshole. You really are. Like the things that you do, lying, cheating, stealing, just made me a jerk. And then when you realize you have like, oh, you were powerless, you really were using against your will, like not as an excuse. I feel like it's an explanation. When I learned about the disease, how it's never going anywhere, it's fatal, it's progressive, and it's incurable, it made me feel kind of hopeless, but I was also kind of hopeful because other people had recovered from that. And that wasn't something that I had ever had any hope for. Like I came into the rooms off a suicide attempt. So, to bounce around a little bit, I first started using on any sort of regular basis. I guess, when I was a kid, a bunch of my friends would hang out outside 7-Eleven and we'd ask some older people to go in and buy us a six pack and we'd buy that six pack. And I think it was more about being cool than actually drinking. It was about getting away with something.
And being like friends with people, right? Social.
Yeah, and doing stuff. I remember like I think I also just had that mischievous nature. I remember like when you first get to be like what 13 or 14, your parents leave you alone. They go out to dinner by themselves. Like I remember running downstairs and like grabbing tools and going out and stealing street signs. Like I had that like I want to be bad, you know? And that was like drugs and alcohol were that opportunity. I remember going the first time I ever got high, it was on a school trip. I went away, and the reason I went on the school trip was not because I was interested in Model Congress, but because it was an overnight with my friends. And one of my friends' older sister was friends with this guy, and we were out back. And I grew up in the 80s where they said, just say no, just say no, just say no. And this guy pulled out a little bag, and I was like, what's that? And he goes, it's marijuana. Do you want to try some? And all that training for the last previous, 10 years of my life of just say no, went right out the window. And I said, yeah, let's give it a go. Let's try it. At first, it was everything that I ever wanted from my life. I had these friends. I had this secret society. We had our own language. We had our own spots. It was really cool. I was really into the rituals of it, getting it, like preparing it and then using it and like, the sneaking off and all that stuff. I loved anything that was like behind
And
the scenes.
eating afterwards and eating.
All of it. How it
Taco
opened,
Bell runs.
what music sounded like, what art
Oh
looked
yeah.
like, just the whole the doors of perception opened in my mind. I remember this one party we went to. It was on the beach, and there was like a keg party. And I remember having a couple, probably too many. I think that was a thing, right? Like, never ever had enough. I never had enough. Like, I would be wasted, and I would still want more. And it was time to go, and we were heading home, and I remember being very dizzy. And my friend's sister said to me, like, I was like worried about puking, and she said, "Well, just focus on the stop sign down the block, and that'll like keep you from getting dizzy." And in that moment, I said, "Oh, there are tricks to this." So I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get better at this as I go along. I just have to practice." And that night I got home and I threw up. And I remember like just laying in the bed and the room started spinning and I got on my hands and knees and crawled into the bathroom and I threw up as quietly as possible. But as sick as I was, I could not wait to do it again next week. So I had shared with my friend, I was like, yeah, I got home, I was really sick. And with that, she said, oh, if you put one foot on the floor, the room stops spinning. And I was like, oh, I just need to like get good at this. So like a true addict and like a true, perfectionist, although that's really never been my problem. I just wanted to get as good as I could. And like, that's when I said like everything else kind of fell by the wayside. At that time, like I was on track to get a Regents diploma. I was, a really good student. And I say that not to like to brag that I was so smart, but in a very short time after, that's ninth grade. What are you, 14 or 15? I was in rehab by 16.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, I was in rehab, and what was funny was like, they do the intake, and I'm like, the way I went to rehab actually comes up with the sexuality. With those guys, I experimented. I tried some drugs, LSD, mescaline, mushrooms. Like those were, I had tried angel dust at a certain point. Basically whatever was in your pocket was my drug of choice. There were times that we would just drink bottles of Robitussin and on the way to school and just to see what would happen. Like. And that was it. It was just like, it was literally high school. Get as high as you can, as long as you can, as much as you can.
That is the
And
first time I've heard that. High school. That's the first time I've heard that.
oh, dude, we would get blasted on the way to school. We would drink beers on the way in. Like fast forwarding again, like I ended up getting left back, my senior year, because at the end of the school year, all my grades passed, but I wasn't there enough. I went to school every single day, and out of those 180 days, they had me walking in the building doors 80 days. That's because I'd get to school, I'd have a couple beers, then we'd go smoke joints in the woods, and then like I would just never make it to the rest of the classes, although I was on school grounds every single day. And as much as my grades were there, I had to go back, and
Wow.
yeah. So it was just like it took over instantly, and I didn't regret it. Like it wasn't like I ever said, "Oh, this is starting to be a problem." I never once tried to stop. Like I said, I went to rehab at 16, but that wasn't to stop using. That was to get out of town. Like I was in trouble all the time. The tension in my house was, I was constantly getting kicked out. I was always grounded. Technically, I still think I'm grounded today. If you add all those all those sentences up, I had this really great group of friends, and it's hard. Like I don't know, where do you start with like sexuality? I remember in kindergarten, like me and two of my friends were showing each other our underwear behind a tree. We got ripped out behind that tree and like really reprimanded, like we did something bad, like something really bad. And I remember getting kind of like scolded and thinking sexuality is bad, underwear is bad. And it was just like kids being innocent, but the trouble we got into like really kind of turned me off of that for a really long time. Now fast forward to high school, and even in like junior high, when you start like your friends start pairing off, and I had girlfriends when you didn't really do anything, and I had gone to parties and they were like, okay, I'm gonna come into 60 seconds or 90 seconds or 7 minutes of heaven in the closet. And it was probably like the worst hell for me ever, because I love my girlfriends, as any good queer does. We had our good girlfriends, and the idea, like I even say to this today, I love women enough never to be with one. You guys are a tricky breed. And I respect women so much. I love women, but I really, I just knew it wasn't like it. Just as much as I wanted it to be. Like I actually dated three girls in school that I adored, and they were like three different girls. One was like a very hippie kind of girl that I could jive with. One was very artistic and one was very like surfy and like ravey and all this stuff. And these were three women were just so awesome, and I just felt like if I couldn't make it work with them, then what the hell's wrong with me?
When you say you couldn't make it work with them, what do you mean?
Just like it wasn't jiving, it wasn't good. It was like work. It was like it wasn't like like a smooth, like, as a kid, you wait your whole life to have sex. Like, you just think it, like, every movie in the 80s was like, sex was like this amazing,
The slow music, the lights.
or just even like the college guys, like
Yeah.
getting off. Like, it was supposed to be like this, orgasmic,
Yeah.
amazing experience. And to me, it was like, oh God, is this all there is? Is this what I've waited for? Like, no offense to the women, they were awesome people. It was my experience with it, And then along comes this guy, and like, so I had this friend who was very he was a little feminine. He wasn't very good at sports. He got teased a lot, but he was a sweetheart, very sensitive kid, very nice kid. But the jocks were always really mean to him. And I guess in like 10th grade for me, they were a little older. The group split off, and half of the guys went to the jock side, and they were like the wrestlers and the alphas and all that stuff. And the other half of us kind of turned towards like the psychedelic, dead kind of hippie world. And
By the way, Chris is a Deadhead.
love
Another
it.
one.
For sure,
Another
got to
one.
see Jerry 8 times at in live music, so that was an amazing experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So this one guy was like, like he was planning on going on Dead Tour, and I was spending a lot of time with him because I felt like he was picked on a lot, and I wanted him to know he was appreciated, like he was a good dude. So I was spending a lot of time with him, and it was kind of messed up. Like, he was in his room, and he like had this something in his hand, and he was kind of moving around, and I was like, and he was very effeminate with it, and I said, holy shit. Like, he was always called a fag and a queer and a homo and all that stuff. But like, seeing him in this light for the first time, I said, holy shit, he really is gay. And then another voice inside my head said, shut up, so are you. And for me, that was my moment of truth. It was like I couldn't argue with myself, but I had been fighting that for so long.
Wow.
Yeah, it was powerful, and it was disturbing, and it was hard because I didn't know where to go. I wasn't like I had anyone to talk to about this stuff. I didn't know any queer people. We didn't have a Will and Grace world. We didn't have an ally situation. I was just recently watching a movie. It was a very popular movie in the 80s, Police Academy. And I wondered, like, I was a very homophobic kid and I didn't know why. And then you watch TV from the 80s and everyone's a faggot and a queer and a girly boy. And like, they made it really seem like there was this horrible thing that was like the worst thing you could ever be was gay or an addict, and it turned out to be the two things
Ding,
in
ding,
my
ding,
life
ding, ding.
that I'm
You
most proud of.
win.
They brought me the most joy in my whole life is being a recovering gay man. Honestly, like, I'm very proud of who I am. I worked very hard to be who I am, but that wasn't really the case when I was 16. When I was 16, I went from kind of being popular to losing all my friends. I felt like I was holding this secret. I'm not a good secret holder, so I let my friends know. And I think there was like a guilt by association back in those days. Like, if you were a gay kid, like, the other straight kids didn't really want to hang out with you because they would be considered gay too. I crawled into a dark depression. The guy that I came out for, that I didn't realize that I had fallen for, did not feel the same way about me. Did not want to act on anything, and I crawled into a depression, and I didn't want to live anymore. I mean, like, it was bad. Like, and it lasted for a long time. I used every single day. I didn't want to feel those feelings. If I could black out or pass out, even better. I actually I didn't black out at that period, but I didn't know how to behave either. So it was just about getting out of. I didn't even think about it as getting out of my feelings, but it was the only thing that I wanted to do was be high, like, all the time. I didn't really have the finances for that either, so I kind of like my self-esteem disappeared. My self-worth, like, I found myself like stealing money from my parents, pinching out of bags for my friends, like whatever it took to get high. Like, I had a fake ID, so I would be able to get stuff for other people, and that's how I was able to get high every day, and that's how I got drunk every day. But every day I was self-medicating, although I didn't realize it was self-medicating at the time. So I could tell you this experience. Like, I could tell you this is my truth. My truth was, again, I just thought I had to get it right. I did a lot of LSD, a lot, and very often. I would have these bad trips, and I just kept thinking I would eventually get it right. I don't know what it was, but that's the insanity of the disease, right?
Right.
Like, keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. The magic behind it was very powerful. It was very drawing. It was like the experiences of getting high were, not something I could have ever imagined. They talk about not regretting the past. Like, I don't regret it. I don't think I needed to stay there as long as I did. And I think that was it. Like, I kept going to an empty well. I had that initial magic, the world's magic, we're all connected, love, peace, and all that stuff. But I kept going, and it was empty, and it was draining. And they talk about chasing the dragon. I kept looking for that community that I felt the first time I got high with friends, and like felt like a that family of choice for the first time. And when I talk about being depressed, like my depression lasted a good 5 years. I scraped by high school. I went to a college with a community college with dorms in it. I went from being kind of a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a big pond. And, I remember just that summer before I went to school, it's like people look at the ocean, like how beautiful it is. I would wonder, how far do I have to swim out before I can't make it back? People would look up at the new building being built and maybe aspire one day to have the penthouse. And I would think, I wonder if I jumped off, if I would die. You'd see a hot car going through the streets, and I wonder if I jumped in front of it, would it end it? And I just lived that way for a really long time.
Were you ever formally diagnosed with a mental illness?
I was actually. So now I'm in college. You know, uh, where it really kind of came to a head too. It's easy when you're hanging out with 100 of your closest friends. As a kid on the boardwalk and getting high every day, and it was that kind of place. You had your spots, and you'd go there, and there'd be at minimum there'd be five, at most there'd be 100 kids to hang out with and do that stuff with. And in college, you would think it'd be the same, but like people were busy, like going about their lives. They were doing schoolwork, and by that time, I had been using long enough where my brain was pretty scattered. I remember distinctively kind of like running, right? Like I would try to hang out with my friends and I couldn't really do that. So then I'd like, all right, I'm going to go study, and my brain was mush and I couldn't do that. And I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go clean my room, and I couldn't do that. It was like the ADHD, the habit trail, the need to use was so strong that it was like all consuming. Like it wasn't social use at this point anymore. Like it was, I needed to, when I came into the rooms and I heard using to live and living to use, that's where I was at. I was at this point where I absolutely needed it. Nothing else mattered. I feel very fortunate. There are more fatal drugs out there. Like I never really got into heroin. I'm very blessed. I think the marijuana I smoked in high school was probably laced, but I never got into crack. I never got into crystal meth. Wasn't really a thing on the East Coast at that time, and I'm very grateful for that because my drug of choice was whatever's in your pocket. And I didn't have money either. Like some of the, you go on Dead Tour, and some of these kids have like trust funds, and they're able to like party like that. That wasn't my experience. Like I was never a glamorous user ever. I never did like the Studio 54 lifestyle. That wasn't my story. My story was usually like using in dark rooms, and like I'd go out with my friends at 7 o'clock at night, and it was all cute and like young and fun and like and innocent. And then I'd look at the room around the room at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was hanging out with monsters. That's what it looked like. I remember looking around the room and seeing like, oh, that's Dracula, that's a zombie, that's the Frankenstein. Like
Scary.
it was scary. It was scary, but it was powerful.
Hmm.
And I think I was attracted to the power of that.
Did you continue to struggle with your sexuality in college?
I did. I'd gone to rehab at 16 for a brief stint, and I came back, and they say like a head full of booze and a belly full of booze and a head full of recovery is a bad place to be. And I had forgotten all about that. I'd forgotten all about the 12 steps. I had forgotten because when I went to rehab, I was convinced. I was the guy who went to rehab and was writing letters to his friends saying, "Hey guys, I know what our problem is. We just have to get sober. We just have to get clean. Like the drugs and alcohol are messing us up."
So you heard the message.
I heard the message, but that's the thing. Like, if you this isn't a spectator sport. This isn't a program for people who need it. This isn't even a program for people who want it. This is for a program for people who do it. And if you don't do it, it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work for you. It's gonna work, but not for you. And it wasn't working for me, and I ended up relapsing. And I only mention that because when I was in college, I felt like I was bottoming out again. And this time, like I think those psychedelics opened up doors to my mind that shouldn't have been opened. And I very much remember feeling like I was going to hell. I remember seeing demons everywhere, the tree people, like having just really dark thoughts all the time, like being suicidal, but also being paranoid. Like I remember like the TVs were talking, like I'd watch TV and I was so paranoid that the people on the show, the actors, were talking about me. And I remember thinking, this is so fucked up because I know this is a rerun. So then I had this whole Truman Show kind of experience. And it was crazy. And I remember thinking, like, I can't live here anymore. Like, I'm in hell and everyone here knows it. So I'm just going to kill myself and go to the hell where everyone else in hell is already dead, at least. And that was my best thinking, right? Like, my best thinking land in me getting arrested, getting my stomach pumped, getting, in straitjackets. That's what my best thinking did. And that's what happened for me. Like, I was in college. I remember thinking I was going to hell, and I was thinking what my options are. My options are I'm going to hell anyway, but like I don't want to live. I don't want to live anymore. And I remember thinking like, I don't remember how the process was, but like that downward spiral thinking, that doom thinking was like, I'm gonna have to steal. I'm gonna get arrested. I'm gonna end up in jail. If I end up in jail, I'm gonna get raped. If I get raped, I'm gonna get AIDS. If I'm gonna get AIDS, I'm gonna die. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna end up in hell. I might as well cut out the middleman and just go there myself right now.
Yeah, kill myself
Yeah,
once and for all.
get it over with. And I did that attempt, and I ended up in a psych ward. And that's where I was diagnosed with a bunch of stuff. They gave me a long diagnosis, a bunch of them. Um, what happened was they released me back to school, and after a week in a psych ward without using anything, my mental state recovered. I was fine, like I was okay. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't hearing voices. I wasn't seeing demons.
Were you on
Like
medication?
I was on medication. Yeah, I didn't really like the way the medication made me feel, but I was on it. And then what happened was I got out of school, and everything was fine. And everything's fine. Like that was a bad moment, so I used again.
Oh,
And it wasn't like I went out and you know I just smoked marijuana, and everyone talks about how marijuana is a gateway. Marijuana is easy and all this other stuff. But for me, it triggered something, right? And all those demons were released. Paranoia was back, and
a lot of psychosis is tied to marijuana use. I know a lot of people who have had psychotic episodes of marijuana use. I am one of them.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But try explaining that to somebody who's like, "Oh, don't be a punk," like it's not a big deal.
It's just pot.
It's just pot. If I it's crazy. Like people don't feel like I know when I first came into recovery in the 90s, I didn't feel like I deserved my spot here because I didn't have a hard enough
Hard
war
enough trauma.
story.
Yeah, yeah.
And but it's not really, they always talk about it. It's not what how much you use, but what the drug does to you. And what it did to me was it really knocked the crap out of me. That was a long intro to this part because this is where the recovery starts. But first was the bottom, right? And the bottom was I was back on campus and things were not going well. And I used and I got paranoid again. And I said, oh, I shouldn't have done this. And I took all the medicine they gave me and I ate it. And I walked into my RA's office and I'm like, I took my meds. And he's like, oh, great. I said, no, no, no. I took all my meds.
Oh gosh. Yeah,
Back to
yeah.
the ambulance. Well, I was on the gurney, and they were like, before they could pump my stomach, like I was dying, like I really was. I was crossing over. Like there was that light, right, that everyone talks about. It was such an experience for me. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. And this stupid EMT kept smacking me in the face, saying, "Stay with us, stay with us." And I was so pissed because I wanted to cross over. They got me into the hospital. They shoved that thing down my throat. My body's screaming. Every nerve ending's on fire. All I wanted to do is ground myself by touching the floor. They wouldn't let me off the thing. I'm like fighting with the nurses. I finally like ripped that thing out of my throat, touched the floor. It just hit me. Fuck, you're still here.
Yeah.
Like this was my solution. Drugs were my solution to the feelings I didn't want to feel about the rejection from that broken heart. Suicide was my solution to not wanting to feel the rejection from society for being a drug addict. And now here I am, and all I want to do is just for the pain to end, and I can't even do that right. And I'm in this fucking psych ward, and my parents are coming upstate because I'm upstate, and all I want to do is I want to go home. And then the realization of like going out of the frying pan into the fire, like now I'm leaving school, which was my escape from home,
Right.
and now I'm back in this 10 by 10 cell in my house in Long Beach. Like it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And that's when they talk about like every bottom has a trap door. And that's why it's so important to like recognize that your bottom can be when you stop digging. The first time you ever go out and get drunk or get high and have a throw up, that could be your bottom. That's it. You're welcome in the meetings. You're welcome to recovery. If you threw up, you overdosed on alcohol. If you got paranoid, if you didn't like the way it made you feel, that's enough. The only requirement for membership in these programs is a desire to stop using.
Yeah.
And for me, like that just started like I was in this micro unit, mentally ill, chemically addicted. It was a 5 day a week program. I didn't want to be there, but I had nowhere else to be. And what's kind of ironic is we used to drink and party on this one beach that had the crazy house on it. It was Lincoln Beach in Long Beach. And we always partied there because they were the only building that wouldn't call the cops on us. But the thing about them was there was a building full of, quote unquote crazy people. And now here I am at 19 years old and I'm getting picked up on my corner and I'm on a bus with all these crazy people who are unfit for society and they go to a day program all day. And they'd say the difference between an addict and a bum is they're both sleeping underneath the bridge, but the addict knows there's a better way.
Mm.
And that's what I felt like. I was 19 years old and my life was over. And I was like, how can this fucking be? I was smart. I was cute. Like I was on track for a regent's diploma. Like I had a future ahead of me. And how could it all be over at 19 years old? In the day program, they were telling me, go to meetings, go to meetings, go to meetings, go to meetings. And literally, I only went to meetings because I had nowhere else to go. I said, fine, I'll go to meetings, but I want to go to a gay meeting. And my dad was like, sure, get in the car, let's go. My dad was super supportive. My dad told me when he was driving up to the hospital after he heard that I tried to take my own life, he was just begging God, please I'll do anything. Please just let him live. I'll do anything.
Were they supportive of your sexuality?
My mom's passed, so I could say that I didn't really get a warm embrace from her. We were butting heads about everything at that time. We didn't have a very good relationship. I think that strained my relationship with my father quite a bit. My dad's a very masculine, guy. Like, I don't think it made his day to hear that he had a queer son. But I think when it came to, like, I'm going to have a queer son or I'm not going to have a son at all because he's going to be dead, I think that's what kind of opened his mind a little bit. We have a great relationship today. Like, he was very accepting. My mom and I just never really talked after I moved out. So I went to that meeting. I remember sitting in the car and smoking like half a pack of cigarettes with him, just watching people go in and out of that church basement. Finally, it was time, and I went inside. I remember thinking, they're passing the basket. That's how the person who's leading the meeting is going to get high that night. And I remember looking up at the 12 steps and being like, I'm not falling for that. Like, this is like, this is a God thing? Like, I'm not one of those wackos. And turning your will and your life over the care of God. At one point I was on welfare and I had to go to DSS and I saw this guy and he had like a sheet wrapped around him and a tambourine and he was like singing praise God. I was like, that's what they want for me to do. I'm like, I'm not about this life. Like, I'll go back to sleeping underneath the boardwalk.
You Long Beachers really love to sleep under that fucking boardwalk.
Yo, it
Man.
was nice. It was.
warm.
It's nice when it's a choice. It's cute at 16. At 48, I don't think it'd be so cute. And I remember thinking, like, to God, to ourselves, and to another nature, but the exact nature of our wrongs, and then like made amends. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing any of that. I'm gonna tell you what I did, and there's gonna be a cop car waiting out back for me, and you're gonna take me off to jail. Like, I'm not stupid. I'm not falling for that. But those people, they told me to keep coming back, and because I didn't have anywhere else to go, I showed up, and I kept coming back. And I really didn't believe that anybody used the way I used. You guys sat there in your clean clothes and spoke in full sentences, and you had jobs, and you had friends, and you had families, and you were laughing. There was no way you guys had it as bad as me. I had that terminal uniqueness that was keeping me from embracing the program. I just kept coming back because I had nowhere else to go. I remember my dad would give me $10 to go to the diner, and I would get a glass of water, and then I'd use the $10 to get whatever I could to get me high that night. This went on for a while, but I had this one guy, I won't mention his name either, but he was a sweetheart of a guy. He kept picking me up for meetings and taking me to meetings, and I developed a little bit of a crush on my friend. And I know I knew it was like taboo, like you don't date anyone under a year. And being an addict and a person of grand gestures, I remember thinking like his anniversary was coming up. Like when I first met him, he had 3 years, and they started announcing his fourth year. And I said, oh, well, if I get clean in April, then in a year from now we could date. Like, that was my mentality, right? Like, and
Whatever motivates you, babe.
exactly, whatever gets you there. And April came, and it was April came, and I was like, all right, this is the month, I'm gonna do it. And the obsession to use was so strong, and I couldn't do it. April 1st, April 2nd, April 3rd, April 4th, April 5th, could not put a day together. Maybe I'd put a day together, maybe I'd put 2 days together, but never any, and I've never never really felt like I had it. So I had tried for 23 consecutive days, but April 23rd was the last day I used. And I remember that day I wanted to finish by midnight. So I took the rest of my stuff, and I had been going to meetings for a long time, and I kept hearing about this loving God. And as a gay person, like, I didn't think that meant me, but now I'm in a room full of LGBT people in recovery talking about this loving God. And I was like, well, if God does exist, he certainly doesn't like me. I just knew that there was a devil. Like, I knew it. Like, I'd seen him, I'd heard him, but I remember this one time I was walking down the stairs and I felt this presence just shove me against the wall. So I knew there was like a darkness to the world. But now my support group and these people were challenging me. Maybe there's a higher power. And with that, I remember I went down to the beach, and right before midnight, I finished off the last of my stuff. And I said, hey, God, if you do exist, can you please help me get clean? Can you please help me stop using? I didn't really think anything of it So when I asked God for help in this moment, I remember I stood up and I turned around. But a very weird phenomenon sensation happened for me. My vision stayed the same, but as I turned around, I was able to see what was behind me the whole time. Because I was always looking at the problems. I always saw the problem. I always saw the devil. I always saw the darkness. I always saw the demons. But when I turned around this time, I saw God for like the first time. And I saw the angels. And I saw the light. And I saw the hope. And I saw possibilities for a future. And I realized, like, I never understood why the devil didn't just tear me up. The devil wasn't afraid of me, but my higher power, who I could never see, who had my back behind me, was keeping it at bay. So when I turned around and I started walking towards the light and I started walking in towards the recovery process, you know, they say when you get clean, you do not get the keys to heaven. Rather, you get the keys to hell. And that was the keys that released me from hell, was my recovery.
Oh, wow. That's a really powerful visual there.
It really was. And it was such a prophetic thing for me. And I was just said, holy shit. And there it was. Like all the magic I was looking for in drugs and alcohol was right there in my higher power the whole time. And because I had already been going to meetings, I already had a support group. I already had those secret places to go. I already had that secret language. I already had like, you know, the secret handshake of like, hey, you a friend of, you know, are you in recovery? Or you a friend of Bill's? Like all these things like kind of were already in place for me. So like God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself way before I ever even acknowledged it.
The foundation was laid.
It was there for me. And I had another moment like when I was walking off the beach. I remember like, you know, when you like when you panic, like you forget something, you're like, oh shit, where are my keys, my cigarettes, my phone? Like where, like you kind of pat yourself down to see what you're missing. As I got to the part of the beach where the sand meets the stone, where you meet the street, I had that feeling like, oh shit, I'm forgetting something. Like what am I forgetting? And I realized like when I made that request, when I asked God to help me, when I surrendered to the recovery process, that I was leaving behind all that dis-ease. You know, I didn't have to worry about where I was going to tell my parents I was, where I was going to get the next $10, you know, how I was going to pass the next urine test. I was able to surrender that and leave that behind. If that was the only gift recovery gave me, that alone was worth it. Just not having to lie every single word out of my mouth was like a lie. And then they say whatever you like, you know, if you put half the attention into your recovery that you put into your disease and to getting high, you're going to do just fine. Mm-hmm. And being the addict that I am, I wanted this program. You know, I really did. I really threw everything I had into it. I read whatever I could read. I got a sponsor. I got into the step work. I got a commitment. They gave me the keys to the church. Nobody was giving me keys to nothing back then. And they gave me the keys to the church, and I made that coffee with such pride, and I was there early, and, you know, I took all the suggestions, you know, and at first I was like, you know, I was very curious. I'm like, I don't want to be I'm not being the meetings bitch. Why do I got to do this? And they're like, you get there first because it's easier as a newcomer who's uncomfortable to be the first person in a room and let the room fill up around you. One person walks in at a time rather than walking into a room with 30 people. Yeah, but why do I have to sit in the front? Chris, you have the worst ADHD I've ever seen in my life. You know, like when you sit in the front, you're not distracted by everything that's going on in the room. When you're there, you're just having conversation with the speaker. When you share, the speaker's right in front of you. I got to a meeting once late, even like recently, and I was sitting in the back and I raised my hand, and when everyone turned around to me, my stomach fell out. Like I had that pit in my stomach. But when you sit in the front, you don't get that. And it's a connection. They talk about the promises and how you'll gain interest in your fellows. Like, I love my recovering people. Like, I feel so privileged to be able to, for people to share so freely about their lives and what makes them tick, and I get to experience it and I get to be a part of that. Like, it's so much different than the TV talking to me, you know? It's a different level of intimacy. I'm really grateful. I have been a very proud member. The word serenity, it's just like a bumper sticker until it means something to you. And I remember thinking, like, my thought process was, before I put any time together, before I really surrendered, was, I'm going to give this program 6 months. I'm going to do everything they tell me to do. And when it doesn't work for me, no one can blame me for killing myself. Because I'm too weak to do it right now, or I would. I've already tried twice. I couldn't do it. And what happened was I was in the meeting like probably like a year or two later, and someone shared, if you're new in recovery and you're feeling suicidal, give yourself 5 years of recovery. Go to the mirror and look at the innocent person you almost murdered. That really hit home with me because, you know, like I could have taken away my dad's kid. I could have taken away my brother's brother. You know, there's so many friends that I've made now that, you know, wouldn't have had the gift of me in their life. And I'm not saying that like as like a brag. I've enjoyed them too. Like the community that we have is so amazing. And I think at the same meeting, someone said, hope. And hope is another one of those bumper sticker words until it means something to you. And I never even I didn't even know what hope was. Like it was a Disney word. And the acronyms have been so good for me. Hold on, peace exists. And that's been my experience. Like I have peace in my life today that I never thought I would have. Steps, solutions to every problem serenely. Sponsor, serene person offering newcomers suggestions on recovery. There's just so many that come up when they're needed. I'm poly fellowshipped. I go to a host of different fellowships. If I need something, I'm not too proud. You get those tips and tricks. One of my character defects is I like to overeat. I need to hit Overeaters Anonymous sometimes, Like I don't think there's a 12-step program I haven't qualified for. That's just how it is. Once you're an addict, you're an addict. That's the thing about acceptance, right? Like whether I want to be an addict or I don't want to be an addict has no bearing on the fact that I am an addict. That gives me the choice. Like I can act as if I'm not an addict and have a very rough life, or I could surrender and have a beautiful life. And that's what I've experienced. But also, like, not for nothing, like some of the mental illness. So after 6 months of clean time, I went back to that psychiatrist and he's like, you're not bipolar. You're not schizoaffective. You don't have a borderline personality disorder. But those were all things that like my disease, the symptoms of my disease masked as. I was lucky enough that I was able to get off those medicines and I was able to like build a life. I still struggle with depression. There'll be times where I'll just wake up from a dream thinking like, wow, man, you need to kill yourself. And this is with clean time and everything. The program has also afforded me the ability, we don't use a day at a time. We don't use just for today. We learn to postpone it like, yeah, I'll get high tomorrow, but just for today, I'm not. And that's how I've had to handle my mental illness. Sure, I could end it one day, but not today. It's not the same as it was back then. Like I've learned that you have to live your life and enjoy your life. And for me, one of the things that I love to do is I don't know how much time I have on this planet, but I want to see as much of it as I can. So one of the things that I enjoy is traveling, and where I find like, drugs offer instant gratification. I don't want to feel this feeling. I want to feel up. There's something for that. I want to feel down. There's something for that. I want to go to sleep. There's something for that. I don't want to feel pain. There's something for that. I want to be bigger. There's something for that. In recovery, I've really learned time, things I must earn. And this is my education. And for me, what I love about travel is it's something I actually have to earn. I actually have to save up the money. I have to do the footwork. And then I go and I explore and I have this wonderful time and I feel more connected to the world and the people in it. And wherever I've gone, I've been to meetings in Iceland. I've been to meetings in London, in Paris, in Hawaii. I've been to Japan. I've been to Russia. I'm going back to Australia where I was at a queer meeting where I walked into that meeting and I'm like, I felt home. I was having a tough time. I was by myself. Oh my God. On my way to Australia, the steward was trying to usher me to a row that had nobody on it so I could go to sleep. But I was like, no, I'm good here. And then I went back and that seat was covered. And the whole flight for about 21 hours, I was in the downward spiral and I was going, you fucking idiot, you fucking idiot, you fucking idiot. You should just kill yourself. Because I was stuck on this plane, right? And like that was my disease. I was stuck in this trail. And as soon as I landed in Sydney, I got out the meeting list and I went on the app and I found a gay and lesbian meeting in Surrey Hills where I was staying. And I chose to stay there because I knew there was an LGBT community there. I was rolling my suitcase up and down those hills of Sydney, and I parked myself on the curb for 2 hours before that meeting started. And when that meeting door opened, I went inside, I helped set up the room, I sat down, and when I got my chance to chat, I said, I'm Chris, I just got here from New York, I'm having a miserable time, I feel like blowing my brains out, I don't know what to do with myself. And sure enough, some guys after the meeting, they stuck me out, they said, we have another meeting here tonight, come back. I went to that meeting 3 or 4 times while I was there. Someone from the rooms took me down to Bondi Beach, he took me to his favorite clam shop, like he showed me around, and that's just such a gift that we get from the program, is that fellowship. As soon as I walked into that room, I felt at home.
Welcoming you.
Yeah, and supporting me and like wanting the best for me, because it's very easy for me to get into how dark it is and how we're all like everyone's out to get you. This program shows me evidence that it's not that way. Like that's part of the we have the physical allergy and the mental obsession, and the mental obsession is evidence contrary to all proof. That thought that somehow this is going to be different. And I need that experience. They say a smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person can learn from other people's mistakes. Well, must be the dumbest person in the world because I need to make the same mistakes 15, 30, 400 times before I'll actually learn it. thank God for all the grace, right? Like they talk about God's grace. It's amazing. That relationship I have with my higher power is so amazing. And it comes and it goes. I love the expression like we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Part of that human experience is not being connected all the time. You know, the peaks and the valleys. Like when you're in the valley and you're in the swamp and you're having a tough time and you can hardly see 3 feet in front of you and you struggle through and you muck through the muck and the dirt and everything and you start to climb the mountain and you're having a really tough time. But then you get to the top of that mountain and you're like feeling the breeze and you're feeling that connection, the sunlight on your face, and it feels amazing. And then, you know, you're there for a minute and you go, wow, this is really great. But then off in the distance somewhere you see another mountaintop and another goal and you think, I'd like to see what the view's like from over there. And we volunteer to go back through the hard work and the downhill and we get lost and we get sidetracked and we get, you know, like I despair and I can't get through with it. And why did I ever do this? I'm so stupid. Why did I make this choice? And then again, you trudge and you trudge and you trudge and you get back to there and you go, look how far I've come. You know, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned in recovery is you're sitting in my house with me right now. And sometimes I could say, you know, this is a little house and, you know, it doesn't really have much. But if you measure backwards to not like where you're at, but how far you've come from being on food stamps, for being in a padded cell, from being in a straitjacket, for being locked up, you know, for being resuscitated on a gurney more than once, to owning a home and feeling the love in that and being able to care for my pets and being able to be in a monogamous relationship for 12 years. Like these are all things that I never would have thought if you talked to me 20 years ago.
Serving cheese and crackers in front of a fireplace.
Yeah. Like I never, like who's got it better than me? Yeah. Nobody. But I have those built-in forgetters and they talk about the ism, you know, incredibly short memory. You know, I forget all the time that irritable, restless, and discontentment. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel grateful that I know I'm an addict. Because if I wasn't an addict, I would just be an asshole who's ungrateful for everything, you know? Because that's an asshole. Like, you're an asshole if you can't feel gratitude for the things that you have and the gifts and the people, and you just take them for advantage. But when you know you have a medical, like literally a medical diagnosis, because this is a disease that is going to affect your attitude, your body, mind, and your spirit, your recovery has to be threefold too. You have to have a recovery in your body, mind, and spirit. You know, and I go to the gym all the time to get those endorphins going, so I feel good about myself at the person I look at in the mirror, and so I could have that cheese and that milkshake, you know, because I want to enjoy my life. I read a lot. I sponsor other men. I did a lot of outside help. I still go in when I was going through my breakup after 12 years. I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision and I wasn't on instincts riot. And I went to therapy for a few weeks, for several weeks. And then I realized like, you know, this is kind of redundant. Like I know I love therapy. Thank God for therapy, but it's not right for me right now, you know, and I have a support group. My sponsor, I have a great sponsor. I'm going through another round of steps in the NA literature. Um, I'm taking other people through the work. It's great. I'm really a very satisfied customer of this program.
It's good to see that you were able to turn it around, right, from wanting to end it all to where you are today. Because you seem like a very happy person.
Yes. Yes. But I'd be lying if I said, you know, I didn't still have my dark times and my tough days. Yeah, we all do, definitely. And I think that's being very real. When I got here, you know, I remember thinking, once I have 5 years, once I have 10 years, once I have 15 years, once I have 20 years, all the problems that I was dealing with weren't going to be a factor. And that's not how my experience has been. Like, I still struggle from day to day. The difference is I have a toolkit today, you know, and how quickly I am to recognize that and work on it is how happy I'm going to be. You know, they talk about it, you could be as happy as you want to be in this program. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. All these little assets, you know, all these little things I hear at meetings. I don't hear this on TV. I don't hear this in music. You know, one of the best things I ever heard was a blade of grass grows a day's growth in a day's time. I love that because, you know, at one day I wanted to have 5. At 5 days I thought I should have 90. At 90 days I wanted to have a year. At a year I thought I should have 5 years. And I always like kind of was wishing my life away. And that's why I think the one day at a time, you know, you could do anything for a day. If you can't do it for a day, you could do it for an hour. And if you can't do it for an hour, you could do it for a minute. You know, if you can't do it for a minute, you could do it for a second. A lot of my recovery has been like this game of hot and cold. Try this out. How do you feel about, you know, cutting down on meetings? Oh, I don't feel so good. Maybe I need to go back to more meetings. You should meditate 20 minutes every day. Unless you're really busy, then meditate for an hour. If you think you have a good idea, call your sponsor. If you think it's a great idea, go see him in person. Because my best thinking is still my thinking, and it's still going through that filter. And sometimes I do struggle with like when I'm having a thought, I'm like, is this a recovery thought or is this an addiction thought? And that's why that soundboard is so important about bouncing it off other people and just getting another perspective on it. It's a good life, man. It really is. I mean, I could not imagine what my life would be like if they came up with a pill that ended the disease and I never, would use again if I took this pill. I would really be at a loss because I need the fellowship. I need the program. I need a sense of purpose. Like I never had a sense of purpose, but to carry this message and help others is such a noble thing. Like I'm so proud of myself. I meditate a lot. I remember I had this sponsee over and like before I meditate, the 11th step is we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So usually before I meditate, I say something like, "Hey God, what is it that you want me to know? Is there anything I could be doing right now? Please guide me." And whenever I do step work with somebody, we start off with a meditation or end with a meditation if I forget, because often I forget. And I remember doing that with somebody, and I sat down and we started to meditate, and I was like, "Hey God, is there anything like I feel like I'm gonna choke? I'm getting a little choked up right now." And I said, "Hey God, is there anything that you want to see me doing right now?" And the message I got back was, "Look at what you're doing right now." And it was so powerful to me because I was so useless. I felt so fucking useless. And all I ever wanted was like a family and to be loved, to love and to love, to be loved and to love. And this program's given me that opportunity. It was a couple of days ago. I was feeling lonely. It's the holidays. I'm unpartnered. It's not a great dating pool out here on Long Island for the queer community. And I asked God. I was like, God, like and he sent me a sponsee. And it was really in the last couple of days, and we've been talking every day, and it's that purpose and it's that connection. It doesn't always have to be a romantic or a sexual connection, but just to feel alive and connected to somebody or to people is important. That's when the program first started. The first 12 steps was with Bill Wilson, and he was forming this program, and he was talking to this guy Carl Jung, who was the leading psychiatrist in alcoholic field over, I think he was in Europe at the time. And Carl Jung wrote back to Bill Wilson while they were forming this stuff. He said, "No man isolated from his fellows without the protection from above has the power to resist evil, aptly known as the devil." This was a psychiatrist who's mentioning the devil. And Bill took that, and the whole point of the 12 steps is to get to a connection to a higher power, to having had a spiritual awakening, right? So that's what that 12 steps are. It's about getting that connection with the higher power. The other half of the program is the fellowship, the what happens in between member to member, the therapeutic value of one addict helping another, setting up the room and having purpose. Like that's what this is all about. It's about breaking the isolation and forming the bond with a higher power. Because before that, what did we have? We had jails, institutions, and death. That's what happens. And I had been resuscitated twice. I had been in jail a couple times, and what was the other one? And I definitely been in like psych ward. Like where else was I going? I had this woman. She changes one word in the Serenity Prayer, and it makes a big difference. She said rather than God grant me, she said God grants me. And God grants me the serenity. And I didn't even really understand the serenity prayer so much when I first got here, but it's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. What can I change? Everything outside of myself. Every single thing. The courage to change the things I can. Me, myself, and I is the only thing I truly have any power over. And the wisdom to know the difference. And that's a tough one, right? Like, where do I end and you begin? Because I think I can have control. I think I could shape the way you want to view something, and there's a whole other fellowship for that too, and I've had to, and I not had to, I've chosen to walk down that path too, because AA and NA have been very good about putting the cork in the bottle and getting me to stop. But those ACOA issues, that adult child stuff, those relationships still cause me trouble and still could lead me to a place where I feel the need to self-medicate. And by dealing with them in other fellowships, I no longer feel that need. Like I feel like I've gotten, some tips and tricks to get through that, and different support and hearing different, and different like validations, like, hey, I didn't cause it, I can't cure it, and I can't control it. That all plays in. The three A's: awareness, acceptance, and action. The three P's: pause, pray, proceed. The four M's: managing, martyrdom, manipulation, mothering. I can mother like the best of them.
First of all, I'll say as a person with 2 years clean, like sitting across From a person with 20 years clean, I have learned a lot of acronyms. I'm really glad that I'm recording this so I can listen back to it and write down all the acronyms. But, you have a really unique perspective and there's a lot of wisdom. That's what I love about doing this project is being able to listen to so many different people's perspectives and hear their story. It's just I feel a lot of gratitude right now and thank you for opening yourself up and, just even getting emotional. That was very special. I want to thank you for sure for giving your perspective and just being visible when you speak in a room full of people and you come out as a gay man. It makes another person feel safe
Yeah.
to say I can do that too, if they're in the closet especially.
I'm so grateful for the men and women who came before me. I like they built the house. It's fucked up. It's like this disease is so dark and so evil. Like I forgot about that. Like I had a relapse in my story. After 4.5 years clean and thinking about, because I got sober when I was 19, I never had a legal drink. And I remember thinking like, oh, if I pick up, I really have to be careful not to drink and drive. And yes, my dad will be disappointed, but I'll just have to manage it better, right? Because I know better. And when I picked up, it was going to Phil and Friends at Jones Beach, and I was dating this boy who everything was going so great with this boy, except he smoked pot. And I thought, well, we're going to a Grateful Dead show. Like, if you're going to a Grateful Dead show and you smoke pot, this is the place to smoke pot. And I hadn't been particularly vigilant for a little while, and I wasn't really happy in my recovery. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I'm going to smoke with you too. And he goes, I don't think that's a good idea. And I said, no, 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 it's fine. I said, it's fine. It's fine. I've been sober 4.5 years. It's fine. Like, it's enough time. And he was like, I really don't think that's a good idea. And I took the pipe out of his hand and I took a hit. And I remember him saying, are you okay? And this voice came out of me. And I swear to God, I'll never forget it. I said, the words that came out of my voice, I don't know, I can't even say, like, sometimes God speaks through you, or maybe it's not always God that's speaking through you. And the voice that came out of me, the words that came out of me said, you set me free.
Oh, God, that's so fucking scary, dude.
I've got goosebumps right now.
Oh my God, that's so scary.
And what happened was Pandora's box was opened, all the evil in the world is released. And that's what happened to me. Like, I was worried about a DWI. I was worried about the police. I forgot about all those demons that were literally, crawling out of the walls. And we were at that concert. I don't actually remember the rest of the night because I remember being by myself in the parking lot when I was looking for harder drugs. And I'm pretty sure he broke up with me that night. And I know that my landlord wanted me out of the apartment within a week, who loved me the week before that. And I know my job was in jeopardy within a month.
Oh my
And I
God.
knew, I went home that night and in the wood paneling, I was seeing those demons again. And those voices were back on. And the TV was talking to me. And during the next 4.5 years that I was out there again and experiencing blackouts and waking up behind the wheel and thinking I'm driving on the wrong side of the road. So I turn around the car on the expressway because it's 4 o'clock in the morning and I've convinced myself I'm on the wrong side of the road and coming to at red lights, not knowing where I was. When I crawled back into the rooms, I just, I tried to get clean a couple times in between that. And then when I came back into the rooms, I just had this fuck you, pay me attitude. Like, I'm not here to make friends. If I make any, that's great. But I'm really here to just not use a day at a time because I had had enough.
How long were you out for?
4.5 years.
Wow. So you spent 4.5 years in and then 4.5 years out.
Yep.
Jesus Christ, you're so lucky that you made it back. Holy fuck.
I know. I'm glad I had that experience. And it sounds weird because there are no more reservations. There's no more like back when I was a kid, I was like, oh, the reason I used is because my mom was an asshole or because I wasn't out or because whatever. Now I'm on my own. When I was 19 or 20 in recovery, I thought I just wanted to be like one of those guys on Fire Island, dancing in the spotlight, having a good time. Like I never got to have that experience because I got sober at 19. Yeah. And then I always thought I was missing out. And then what had happened was I picked up and by the end of it, like I had moved in with my bartender and the guys that were using the same way I was. And I thought they were worse than me, but they were so sick of me. They were like pouring my vodka down the sink because they're like, fuck you, I'm sleeping tonight. Like, you're a mess. Coming home and no one talking to me, or waking up in the middle of the day because I had to have 3 days. Because if I woke up on a day off, I'd start drinking at 8 in the morning, and then I'd pass out by noon. I'd wake up at 2 or 3, start drinking again, pass out at like 6 or 7, or wake up at 6 or 7, start drinking again. Like, I could not say no. I would pass the bottle in the morning, and I'd go, no, I'm not going to drink. It's 8 in the morning. I'd pass it again at 8:10. I'm not going to drink. It's 8:10 in the morning. Pass it again at 8:30. And guess what? I was having a drink. And once I took that first one, it was off to the races. There was no stopping me. So I'd have like these 3 days in a day, and my roommates were sick of it. I remember one day I went to take a shower, and I come back and my room's on fire. I had emptied an ashtray into the garbage, and it caught fire, and there were these 5-foot flames in the bedroom, and they no longer wanted me to live there.
Right.
And that was the story of every time I thought I hit a bottom, there was another trap door. It just kept getting worse. Just not knowing if I was going to make it through the night or not. I'm glad that I had that relapse, only because there's no doubt in my mind or in my being that I am truly affected by this disease of addiction. And there's no cure for it.
You fucked around, you found out.
Did I ever? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you made it back, and congratulations on having 20 years.
Thank you.
21 in June, only 6 months away, which is amazing. And
I'll be legal.
Yeah, you're pretty awesome.
Thank you so much for this experience.
Yeah.
I think you're doing a tremendous service.
Thank
I
you.
could see the value in it. I think it's amazing that people are able to tap into this resource, because not everybody, I've met people in the rooms who have gone deaf because of their using, or have gone blind because of their using, and don't have access to this. So I think it's a really great service. It's a really cool thing to do.
Thank you.
And you're very good at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Well, thank you again for being on and for giving your voice. And it's really good text, and it's important to make it available to people. So thank you for being a part of that project.
My pleasure.
Be well, Chris. Thank you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
The Voices of Recovery podcast is an independent production of the Works of Wisdom. We welcome your questions and donations via PayPal at voicesofrecoverypod@gmail.com. This podcast is an independent production and is not affiliated with, associated with, authorized by, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Narcotics Anonymous or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. While NA literature may be read during episodes for the purpose of supporting recovery, such use does not constitute an official endorsement or representation by Narcotics Anonymous. In accordance with NA tradition, the NA name is not to be used to endorse or be affiliated with any outside enterprise, and no such endorsement or affiliation is implied. Music is by Sage. Thanks for listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast.